My day job. I am based here in Florida, working with my local police department, and I'm thrilled to be emceeing this event. So without further ado, let me introduce you to these amazingly talented authors. We're going to do a quick introduction of each and chat a little bit, and then we're going to go back around and do all the readings and talk about their books. But we're going to start with Hannah Mary McKinnon. Was born in the UK, grew up in Switzerland, and moved to Canada in 2010. After she quit her CEO job and began to write full-time, starting out with a rom-com and soon switching to the dark side. Her suspense novels include The Neighbors, bestseller Her Secret Son, and Sister Dear. She lives in Ontario with her husband and 3 sons. As for favorite snacks and drinks that we always love to talk about on this show, she says her characters don't do a lot of eating, but her favorite snack is Mark Bittman's No Knead bread, especially with a bit of cool salty butter and cheese. As for drinks, she's a fan of caipirinhas, which mixes a liqueur made with sugarcane and lime, or failing that, a good old gin and tonic with lime. I'm sensing a theme here with the lime. Now, I'm fascinated with you growing up in Switzerland, Hannah. I assume you speak German. Do you speak any other languages?
I do. I speak German, Swiss German, and French.
Very cool.
Yes.
So tell us something about yourself. Any other tidbit that I did not already say?
Okay, sure. So I came to Canada in 2010, and that was when my writing career kicked off. It was born out of failure because I had a big cheese job in Switzerland, and when we came to Canada, I decided to start up my own business, which failed miserably, crashed and burned in the first year of inception. But that put me at a crossroads: continue on the corporate road or try something else. And that was when I started to write novels. And so I'm very pleased that I'm here. And yeah, my first one was a rom-com. Don't throw me out.
Okay, we will not. Moving on to Daniel Palmer. Left a successful career building websites and online purchasing platforms for retailers like Barnes & Noble to write full-time, but still couldn't stay away and founded a Day in the Life media video production company. He lives in New Hampshire with his wife and 2 sons, plays blues harmonica, and watches the Red Sox. I know we're here to talk about your book, but I went through your Day in the Life media website and it just seems so unique. It's like, what gave you the idea to merge storytelling and sales using, I assume, mostly web-based outlets?
Yeah, thank you. Great to be here. Nice to see everybody. And I guess Day in the Life Media came about because I just saw a need in the marketplace for companies who sort of misinterpreted their sort of role and importance in storytelling. They were telling, I thought, in my opinion, they were telling the wrong story. They were trying to tell the story where they were Luke Skywalker, if you will, to use a movie metaphor. And the reality is they're actually the Force. Luke Skywalker is the customer, the one who uses the product to better their lives in a certain way. And companies have a hard time understanding that. And so by bringing the storytelling framework through the hero's journey to these companies, I'm able to kind of construct a sort of a methodology by which we can create very compelling video content that tells not only their brand story, but also in a way that resonates with readers because it has that familiar feel of the traditional story arc that we all know through the hero's journey.
That sounds like, actually, honestly, that sounds like really difficult. Trying to boil everything into like one message or something.
Yeah, the interesting thing is the hero's journey kind of gives you the touch points that you have to hit, and then really the job is to edit those down into a 2 to 3 minute video.
Okay. And I forgot to mention that your favorite snack is a slice of cheese pizza from Big Frank's Pizzeria in Swampscott, Massachusetts.
Oh,
and
yeah.
And a Diet Coke, except in my house, it's Coke Zero with cherry.
I should make mention that I'm actually not a big fan of slices of cheese pizza, or I did like Diet Coke, but I haven't had it in a long time. But Big Frank's is the
You
fictional.
totally lied to me.
It's the fictional restaurant in my new book. And so I guess that must have been my inspiration when I was thinking of a favorite snack. I'm like, oh, I can work in a plug when I really didn't need to work in a plug. My favorite snack is hummus. Okay, everybody, it's hummus.
Okay, you can't pick hummus because we got an author in August and he already picked hummus. So
Oh,
sorry.
all
You're
right.
going to have to go with something else.
Think of another snack.
Yeah. Okay. Well, then let's move on to Kris Calvin, who I hope did not lie to me about her favorite snack. Has used her Stanford and Berkeley education in economics and forensic psychology to serve over 20 years as the CEO of the American Academy of Pediatrics, California, a nonprofit dedicated to the health and well-being of children. She still teaches and occasionally consults around her writing schedule. Her character Emma Lawson's signature drink is freshly made lemonade with lots of ice. Her favorite snack is a shortbread walnut bar based on the bars made by author Eileen Rendell. And we are going to be fellow guests of honor at Killer Nashville this year in August.
Oh, very exciting.
Looking forward to that. But you said your day job ended this past January due to the pandemic. So how are you making the adjustment to full-time writer?
Yeah, it was really a major change because I had been there over 20 years and I'm a single parent of 3 kids. So one of the reasons I didn't take any risks and start companies or do exciting things is I felt as though I just needed that paycheck. And psychologically, I was very wedded to that concept, even once I started writing. And because that association of doctors relies on in-person medical education meetings for about half its revenue. And I had been there so long that it would make it difficult for them to continue to pay me. If they brought in someone brand new out of public health school, they could pay that person. So yes, my last day of work was January 6th. And I felt fortunate because I did have a 2-book contract for this series and it just happened to coincide. I thought I would be writing at the same time I was still working. So I am viewing that as the amazing silver lining. And like it sounds like several of you moving into full-time writing without that necessarily being exactly the way I thought this was going to go. But now I'm excited about it and we'll see.
Good luck. I know that's something that's like ingrained in us all when you're used to a steady paycheck is whatever you do, don't quit the day job. But
that's what people kept telling me. Yeah. And so I was like, I'm going to do that. And then, oh, it quit me. So I was like, okay, that'll be new. But yeah, so far, so good.
Yeah, good.
So far, so
good. Okay. Our 4th author is internationally best-selling author Jeffrey Deaver's books are sold in 150 countries, including the Lincoln Rhyme Amelia Sachs series, the Coulter Shaw series, and the Catherine Dance series, along with numerous others. I had to look up nearly all Jeff's favorite food and snacks. Water biscuits, which turn out are these thin crackers, and drunken goat cheese, which is Spanish cheese bathed in red wine, fig spread, and cote de bon, a French Burgundy. If you prefer your goat cheese sober, try Montrachet. Jeff, among the many, many projects you have completed, you wrote an audio play called The Starling Project. What made you decide to do that as a play instead of an audiobook? And why do we not see more audio dramas?
All right. Well, thank you. Hello, Rogue Women. Hello, everybody, friends. And Dan, can I get Big Frank's to deliver? Because I am starving right now.
It's on the way, Jeff.
Okay, thank you. Well, interesting you mentioned that, Lisa, because I've been very attuned to the relationship between the written word that you read and the written word that you listen to. Largely because I've had some eye issues over the last a couple of years. And I also write about 8 or 10 hours a day. And I have to use my eyes for that. So I listen to a lot of books. And I have a relationship with audible.com going back to an ITW fundraiser some years ago, where they asked me to lead a serial novel. And I'm sure you're all familiar with the serial novel. I write one chapter, hand it off to somebody else. And it's a lark, it's a fundraiser. This is not great literature, but it's great fun to do. But they kind of liked the end result and said, would I do an original of my own for them. And rather than write a novella or short story, we agreed, let's do a radio play starring Alfred Molina as the main character. And this was very interesting because I'm not an actor. I have no talent for that whatsoever, but this was fascinating to me. They hired 10 actors, men and women, to voice 30 different roles. And I listened to it. It was astonishing to me. They became, it was set in France, in the Middle East, in America, and in London. And I just had a great time doing it. And I've just had 3 audible.com horror stories. The first time I've done horror, released just last month as original short stories. So interesting you bring that up. I'm very aware of the impact of audiobooks on one's creative excitement.
Very interesting. Yeah, I'm a big fan of audiobooks. And my husband, for some reason, loves like old, like black and white TV. We watch the TV in our house is always on like 50-year-old TV shows, but he loves Sirius radio channel called Radio Classics.
Oh, I know
and
it. I
it's
love
all
it.
the old, yeah, the old radio shows like drag. So when we're on a long trip and we just had to do a trip to Cleveland and back, we listened to like Radio Classics, Gunsmoke and Dragnet and everything. And they did like a radio play of the movie. And now I'm drawing a blank, but it had Claudette Colbert and Veronica Lake and somebody else. And it was a World War II drama. And, so we're driving along on 75 and we're both like crying at the end of it, because it's amazing what just audio productions can do.
Well, what I found was interesting is that we create the characters in our minds. We hear it and then we kind of picture it. We see a little movie in our mind. So we kind of participate in the cinematography and the casting of the role.
It is fascinating. Okay, now we're going to hear from our authors about their current books and get to hear actual pages from them. Going to go back to Hannah Mary. In her latest, You Will Remember Me, an amnesiac wakes up on a beach and goes to his hometown to find out who he is. Problems arise when 2 different women know him as 2 different men. So Hannah, can you read us a section of your book? Or
Love to.
You can, if you want to tell us something more about it first and then read, or read first and then.
You did a great introduction. So I'll just show you the cover. There we go. This one publishes a week tomorrow. This is my 5th book. So I'm excited about that. Psychological thriller. So I'll read you most of the first chapter, but don't worry, it's a really short one. So this is chapter 1, The Man from the Beach. Cold. Cold was the first word that came to mind, the first thing I noticed when I woke up. Not a slight, uncomfortable chill to give me the shivers, but a cramp-inducing, iced to the bone kind of frozen. I lay flat on my stomach, my left ear and cheek pressed into the rough, grainy wet ground beneath me, my entire body shaking. As my thoughts attempted to assemble themselves into some form of understandable order, a wave of icy water nipped at my bare toes and ankles, my instincts pulling my feet out of reach. I had a sudden urge to get up, a primal need to take in my surroundings and assess the danger. Was I in danger? But the throbbing pain deep in my head made the slightest effort to shift anything seem impossible. Lifting a finger would be too much effort, and I acquiesced, allowing myself to lie still for another few freezing seconds as the frigid water crept over the balls of my feet again. When I blinked my eyes open, I was met by a thick, fuzzy darkness enveloping me like a cloak. Where the hell was I? And wherever it was, what was I doing here? When I lifted my head a fraction of an inch, I could barely make out anything in front of me. There was hardly a noise either, nothing but a gentle, steady rumble in the background and the cry of a bird somewhere in the distance. I made my brain work its way backward. Bird, rumble, sand, water, and the quartet formed the vaguely cohesive image of a beach. Another low rumble made me turn around, shuffling slowly in a semicircle. The behemoth effort was rewarded by the sight of 1,000 glistening waves dancing under the moonlight like diamonds, the water stretching out and disappearing into the darkness beyond. As my ears tuned in to the rhythmic whoosh of the waves, my mind worked hard to process each scrap of information it took in. I'm definitely on a beach. It's nighttime. I'm alone. What am I doing here? Before I could answer the single question, 1,000 others crowded my brain, an incessant string of chatter I couldn't stop or get away from. Where is everyone? Never mind them, where am I? Have I been here long? How did I get here? Where was I before? Where are my clothes? What day is it? My legs buckled, not because of the unfamiliar surroundings, the cold burrowing its way deeper into my core, or the pain in my head, which had increased tenfold. No, my knees hit the sand with a dull crunch when I realized I couldn't answer any of the questions because I couldn't recall anything, nothing, not the tiniest of details, including my name.
Wow. That was very interesting. And
Thank
you read it very well.
I've had some practice over the past year reading twice as well, at least once a week on first chapter fun. So, but thank you very much.
So I'm guessing you did a lot of research into amnesia. What causes it, what might cure it? Can you tell us about the science behind your character's problem?
Well, full disclosure, this is not my area of expertise. So I did speak to people who are specialists in this area. So I plumped for retrograde amnesia, which means that a person cannot remember basically their past, because there's another form where you can't form any new memories. So basically you're stuck in the past. And it was really interesting. I disappeared down many a rabbit hole to read all of these cases. But what I found really fascinating was that no two cases of amnesia are really alike. So that allowed me, once I understood the broad strokes, the broader mechanics of how it works, to take some creative license into how I addressed it. But writing a point of view character with amnesia, I've done it once. I'm going to consider it author achievement unlocked, and I'm not sure that I'll do it again, because you can't give them a backstory, you can't give them a memory, you can't give them anything. And as a point of view character, that's actually really difficult. I found that hard, because you can't have scene after scene of somebody saying, sit down, love, I'll give you a cup of tea and let me tell you all about you, because it's really boring. So that really was quite a challenge.
Yeah, I can see where that would be. I read years ago, I think it was called See Jane Run or something by Joy Fielding, that also dealt with amnesia. And the doctor in that said there is actually no such thing as amnesia. It's a hysterical fugue.
Oh, interesting.
But I would assume that is like a purely psychological as opposed to some physiological condition.
Yeah, so from my, and again, I'm not a specialist, but the fugue state generally is some kind of psychological trauma where you really forget everything, and it lasts, could be hours, could be days, could be weeks. Whereas the amnesia that the character has in my book is often caused by blunt force trauma to the head. So it could be a fall, it could be somebody, being attacked or whatever. So yeah, I did read about the fugue state, which was fascinating. But that didn't fit because generally it doesn't last long enough. I needed my character to be out of it for a bit longer.
That's and then I have also read about people who lost years of their life due to like an aneurysm.
Yes.
And some would lose just a year or two, and like one woman lost like 17 years.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Too. So what got you interested? What was the spark for writing this book? What got you interested in amnesia?
So it was a gentleman from Toronto who was on holiday in Lake Placid. He was skiing there on a skiing holiday, and he went missing. Couldn't find him anywhere. They searched the hill, the town. They just could not find him anywhere. And basically they assumed that he was missing, presumed dead or going to die because of the elements, if they couldn't find him in time. And 6 days later, he showed up in Sacramento in his ski gear. And the only thing he knew was he got on a truck and he ended up in Sacramento. No clue why. Didn't know why he chose Sacramento or why he got in the truck or whatever, but he had amnesia. And I believe he remembered either his wife's name or he had some identification on him or something. And he was returned home and everything worked out fine. And he was reunited with his family. But of course, you know, the brain of a thriller writer kicked in, and I thought, oh, what could go wrong? And, you know, that was the spark of the idea. It was a true story.
That often happens.
Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you for sharing all that with
You're
us.
welcome.
We do go on to Daniel now. In Daniel Palmer's latest book, The Perfect Daughter, a state psychiatrist works with a mother to determine the truth behind the murder her 16-year-old daughter has committed. So let's hear an excerpt from The Perfect Daughter.
Okay, let me just make sure. Hannah, can you see this so you could read it for me?
Send it over.
Is that good? Does that work? I also want to say that on that story of the guy who disappears for 6 days and then claims amnesia, did anybody ever just say maybe he was just lying? That's where my brain goes. Like, if I wanted to go on a 6-day bender, I would come back and take a train to somewhere random and go, I don't know how I got here or why. How my brain works. It tells you something. Okay, so this is I'm reading right now, right? That's my my thing that we want to do. Okay, so this is in the middle of chapter 1, and a police officer has shown up at the house of a woman whose daughter has gone missing. When was the last time you saw your daughter? Detective J. Leo asked. His delivery seemed dispassionate, but Grace reminded herself that his job was to remain even-keeled when delivering seismic news. A couple of hours ago, when I had gone for a run, and when I came back, she was gone, Grace said, fighting for every bit of composure she could muster. When was she arrested? She's been at the station an hour and a half or so. A sharp twinge hit the back of Grace's neck, which she tried rubbing away with her hand. So have you talked to her, asked her what happened? We checked her license. She's a minor. It's our policy we talk to you first. Grace thought, and I need to talk to a lawyer. When we arrested her, she was covered in blood. It was all over her body, in her hair. So when you come to the station, you should bring a change of clothes. She's still in her bloody clothes? You left her like that? It's evidence, Aleo said, as explanation. It takes time for us to collect the samples we need before we can let her get cleaned up. I need to get there. I need to leave right now. Grace felt the ground tilt beneath her feet. I understand, Aleo said, continuing to radiate calm. You need to take this a step at a time, okay? I have some more questions I'd like to ask. Blood, Grace whispered. Oh my God. And you said she wasn't hurt? No, there are no visible wounds on Penny, but the victim was found deceased at the scene, and we believe it's the victim's blood on your daughter's body. Grace got the impression the detective was holding something back. She's calling herself Eve, but that's not the name on her license. Again, a chill ran through Grace. Eve. She said she doesn't remember anything that happened before we showed up. We think maybe she's in shock, but we're not sure, Aleo went on. Is Eve a nickname? Grace paused, deciding how to answer. It's more complicated than that, she offered sparingly, thinking that oversharing wouldn't do Penny any good. Thankfully, Aleo decided to let it go. And you had no idea where Penny was headed when she left the house? No, none, Grace said. Had she done that before, Leo asked, taken the car and not told you where she was going? No, it's against the rules, Grace said again, thinking less is more. She likes to take walks. I thought maybe she took the car to go to the beach or something and forgot to tell me. Any reason she might have gone to Lynn? Does she have a friend there? Grace shook her head, reminding herself that Leo wasn't on her side. He had her daughter in custody and his agenda was different from hers. Have you noticed any changes in her behavior lately? Have you seen any anger, withdrawal, anything different? Grace mulled it over before answering. No, she finally managed. Everything has been fine. I think I need a lawyer. Leo's eyes danced across her face in an unsettling way, as if he knew much more than he was letting on. Let me ask you one last question, if I may. I'm sure you want to get down to the station. Do you know a woman named Rachel Boyd? For Grace, it felt as though time itself had come to a stop. Her body went numb, mind a blank. Rachel Boyd, Grace repeated in a quiet voice. Yes, do you know her? Not personally, no. Is she the victim? Yes, Rachel's been murdered. Is there a connection between Penny and Miss Boyd? Leo asked. Grace nodded insensibly. Her legs were shaking, barely able to hold her upright. Yes, she said, her thoughts fading as her vision grew dark. Rachel Boyd is my daughter's birth mother. There you go.
Wow.
Little cheery start to the book, huh? Hey. Sorry.
That was a great ending. You know, you're like, whoa, wait a minute.
Well,
that's
Lee Child
different-
once said something that I love that has just stuck with me for many, many years. He said, really, you always want every chapter to end with a question. You want every sentence, if you can, to kind of lead into a question so that the reader just perpetually keeps wanting to read, because we have this innate desire to have our questions answered. So when there's a question posed like that, then you know, you're just going to want to say, well, what's the answer? And why did she kill her birth mother? And why is she at the station? And why is her name Eve and also Penny? So I tried to bring all of that into the early chapter.
That is great advice. Now, I have no children, but I've been in the same room with a number of young murderers, 15, 14, I think 13 was the youngest. So it's totally easy for me to believe in evil teenagers. But what made you interested in writing about a child murderer?
Well, I really was actually more interested in writing about dissociative identity disorder. So I was looking for a story that I could ground in a mental health issue that would be controversial, but also allow for a lot of depth in character and create a lot of doubt in the minds of the reader. And originally I thought it was multiple personality disorder, but then I found out that doctors now say we actually always have only one personality, not multiples. But in the case of DID, our personality fragments into many types of personalities, and those personalities function as defense mechanisms for the psyche. And usually it occurs around a traumatic event. And it's also a very controversial diagnosis, even though it's in the DSM, the diagnostic manual that psychiatrists use. There's a lot of professionals who believe it's actually a form of a different type of personality disorder, maybe a form of borderline personality disorder or antisocial personality disorder. So it's not even a fully embraced diagnosis. So I thought, what if a girl committed this horrible crime, or appears to have committed this horrible crime? There's really not a lot of question around her guilt. She's holding the murder weapon. She's covered in blood. She's alone in the victim's house. You're a crime scene investigator. I'm sure you would sort of, okay.
It's hard to come back from that.
Hard to come back from that, hard to return. So, and so I thought, well, what if I could write a story where the reader would say, well, okay, it's obviously this, but what if it wasn't? And then what would it be? And so I got to explore dissociative identity disorder wrapped in a murder mystery, wrapped in a family drama. And to me, I thought that just gave a lot of meat on the bone.
It certainly does.
It was actually too much meat on the bone, to be honest.
Yeah.
Hard to write.
Yeah, I can see that. You write under both Daniel Palmer and DJ Palmer with different themes between the two names, talking about having different personalities.
Right.
Can you tell us about that? And will you be writing more Daniel Palmer soon?
Well, it was, I started obviously just, writing as my name, and then I switched publishers. And for a while I was writing books that were in the style and the tradition of my father, Michael Palmer. So it were these Michael Palmer, Daniel Palmer medical mysteries. And this was after my father had passed away. So I was carrying on the tradition at the request of his publisher, which was a great honor. And then I wrote a book that I wanted to write. I thought it was an interesting story around Munchausen syndrome by proxy. And I turned it into my editor and I said, well, I think this is a good book. There's just one tiny, small, little problem with it. I just don't think this is a book my father would have ever written. It's much more of a family drama. It's not, it doesn't have the big kind of geopolitical theater that he liked to write in, or the big medical subterfuge that he would often use as MacGuffins. So my editor read it with a little bit of trepidation, but then returned and said, you know, I just love the book. And so it was her idea that we change my name from Daniel to DJ. She rebranded me and then sort of asked me to write books that were really family-centric dramas. And I think it was, Hannah who said she started off writing rom-com, which I did as well. And so now I've kind of gone back to my original roots, which is really writing about people, real family struggles, but wrapping it up in the kind of the veneer of a thriller.
Very good. Are there a lot of, I mean, I assume from movies and things, there's so many tropes basically with multiple personality disorder. Did you like consciously try to debunk some of the things in your book and try and
more than
real?
consciously, it was actually a mission statement with the book, because I didn't realize how bad it was until I started the research. And that was the first glaring thing that came out to me, were the people who have this condition, and really many of them have developed it coming from extreme trauma. So I felt this great obligation to try to do right by them, by at least portraying the condition as realistically as I possibly could. So what I did essentially was go to first source material, videos on YouTube of people with DID talking about their condition, or blogs or articles that people who have DID have written about, saying these are the stereotypes. And I said, okay, I'm gonna have some characters project those stereotypes so they could be refuted. I'm gonna have the doctor who's going to say, this is what people think, but this is what really happens. And, you know, the feedback on that part of the book has been pretty much universal, where people have said, you know, they really have appreciated the depth and the time that I spent bringing DID to the forefront in the story. And so I'm grateful that at least universally that has been sort of the theme of a lot of the reviews. There are some reviews that I'm less than grateful for, but it's been very well received, and I've been very pleased with that. So it is a big story. It was a big bite of the apple for me to take, and I'm glad I'm done chewing, and glad the book's out there. So yeah.
Good. Sounds fabulous.
Thank you.
Okay, let's hear from in Kris Calvin's All That Fall. State government ethics investigator Emma Lawson has 48 terrifying hours when the governor's granddaughter is kidnapped from her best friend Kate's preschool at the same time Kate's teenage son goes missing. And now we're going to hear part of All That Fall, not read by Kris Calvin, who convinced us she didn't want to do it. So our own Chris Goff is going to step in for her.
Can I just say one thing to set the stage for the scene?
Sure, absolutely.
Thank you. And I really appreciate Kris reading it and you permitting me to do that. I don't know how you all read your creative work as a debut author. I teach, I do all kinds of things. That just terrified me. And they were so nice to say, I could hear you all do it and learn from it. And maybe next time I'll be brave. But this is a scene where Emma, who has no children, is a 32-year-old career woman, very into her work, doesn't let people in her life, but she has one close friend who moved here from Ireland 5 years ago, has a now teen son, 15-year-old son. Her very dear friend, Kate, is opening a preschool. Emma decided to help her, has invested in it, is going there now, taking one day off work, even though she doesn't want to go to the preschool to do some of the preparations. It's 3 days before the grand opening. So it's not yet kidnaps and murders is what I wanted to make clear. This is something else that's happening when Emma goes to make preparations at the preschool. Thank you, Kris.
Okay, you're welcome. I hope I do it justice. As Emma signaled to turn into the Rainbow Alley lot, she saw a white van parked along the tree line. She was relieved. It must be the painters. They were the only work crew scheduled for today. There'd always been the possibility they wouldn't show, and she knew Kate felt it important that the sign be bright and welcoming for the kids on their first day, now only a weekend away. Of course, there might be other things they hadn't thought of, but she reassured herself that with Kate's list and her own approach of tackling whatever seemed most immediate, they'd have everything ready in time. As she parked in the drop-off area along the curb, she saw the back door to the van was open. She figured they'd just arrived and were unloading. Slinging her satchel over one shoulder, Emma crossed the lot to greet them. She stopped short at the sight of a pair of black trainers sticking out on the pavement just past the open van door. She took a few more steps and saw they belonged to a man who lay on his back. His arms were thrown wide, his face shattered and unrecognizable beneath a mass of blood. She couldn't take it in. Her first thought was, why would anyone shoot the painter? Then it occurred to her a far more pressing question was, where is the shooter now? She scanned the line of trees, the play area, and the patio. She saw no one. There was a large handgun on the ground several feet from the body. She instinctively stepped back from it. Her call to 911 immediately connected. There's been a shooting, she said. She gave the address. The operator, having taken it down along with Emma's assessment that the painter was definitely dead, asked if there was anyone else there. Emma gasped. Kate was out buying supplies, but she might have come back early. She could be inside. Emma eyed the gun on the ground. She'd never win in a shootout, but if the attacker was in the building and Kate was at risk, she might be able to bluff, to stall until the police arrived. She had to try. She told the operator she would leave the line open and over his protest, set the phone down and retrieved the gun. It was sticky with the fallen man's blood. Her stomach roiled as she wiped it on her skirt, but clasping it firmly, she moved to the gate, pushed it open, and nearly stepped on Kate. Emma sank to her knees. She felt as though she'd been struck. Kate lay perfectly still, blood matted on the side of her head, a deep red stripe down her face, the rest ghostly white.
Thank you.
Wow. Great job, Kris.
Thank you,
Both
Kris.
Chris's.
I was gonna say, thank you, Kris.
And I'm sure your experience as both a mom and a child advocate gave you much to draw on in this book. But I'd love to know if your forensic psychology background pops up a lot in your writing, whether you mean it to or not.
So it's interesting to hear Daniel and Hannah's work. I got very pulled into both of their excerpts. So I ended up in child advocacy because I didn't feel safe in my own home as a child. So I have trauma experiences and ended up at the public library that I could walk to and read adventures where the children were safe. They were saved by others or saved themselves. And so reading became my sanctuary. And so I've been a lifelong reader, not a writer, not a creative person, and wasn't interested in being creative. So all that background you heard about in economics and then forensic psychology was some of, I know a little something about fugue states, and was my way of not looking at anything, again, creative or imaginary, just getting into the science. What's good for children? What can I go sit across from the governor and say, this is good for children, and go from the evidence? You know, I wasn't interested in anything where harm could come to children. So the forensic psychology was probably part of that whole trying to understand how things that happened to me could have happened, as opposed to really learning about it the way that you're a professional and you understand it. When it came to writing this book, which is my debut thriller, I wanted an adventure story where I could have children in jeopardy but be safe. So that's a huge spoiler. It's a kidnapped story of a 3-year-old child. The 3-year-old child will be fine. So it's written from a perspective of women's friendships and a child being in danger. And I was most interested in teens. It sounds like similar to Daniel, but from the opposite side, where how could a teen be not a superhero but a hero? What could a teen do in this situation with a missing 3-year-old? So it didn't directly answer your question, except to say that I don't think I brought the forensic psychology from me. I benefited from it because I'm still alive and here. And so the more I could learn to cope with my own traumas, eventually led me to finding out that writing, not writing the scary things. Those of you who write the scary things, I love that you can do that in a way that's safe for me. It's between the covers of a book. But for me, my writing has to be where, again, I off adults all the time because it doesn't bother me. So
Yeah.
my books, they're thrillers, they have people die, but the children are safe. And that's part of the child advocacy history. And I even have a warning on my website for sensitive readers. Since I didn't intend to write a book about a 3-year-old being kidnapped, I don't outline, but the 3-year-old marched in and got kidnapped. So then I had to figure out what happened next. So that's kind of those blended backgrounds mean I now can have fun in a way that I never knew I'd be able to.
That's wonderful. So do your children read your books, and do they find like something they said or did ever pop up in them?
So one of my sons was a partial inspiration, or is, for the teen son, the son who's 15, plays saxophone, which my son does, and so on. And so, I think, yes, there are inspirations in various ways. My daughter has been a public defender. And so I would ask her questions about the police procedural aspects of it. And it reminded me of, one of you was saying that there isn't actually a definite way of defining. It seems like it came up in both amnesia and in the different personalities. And when I asked her, what would a police officer do in this situation, and what would it dictate, and what could a criminal get away with, she just said it can be whatever you want, because every case is different, and some police don't follow the rules and some do, and some criminals do this and some do that. So the whole research aspect of it, something that helped me was to understand that you learn everything you can learn, which is what it sounds like Hannah and Daniel said, but then you can, in fact, for your own book, make it happen a little bit differently. And still experts will, except for the mean experts, the nice experts will say, yes, every case is different.
Well, that is very true. So every case is different. So we can get away with a lot.
Yeah, and I should mention my third son. So
least try.
He's an elected official in San Francisco. He's on the board of supervisors. So because my book also gets into politics, and I've been a local elected official, I also consult. So all three of my kids help me figure things out.
It's always good to have a good family network of experts.
Although I did write A Woman with No Children, because I like to imagine my life as much as I love my children. I think there are interesting ways for women to experience the world that might not happen. So since this is a series, I'm looking forward to moving along with Emma in that life.
And it's always difficult to have your character like out investigating when she needs to like do the laundry, and has got to get dinner on the table and pick up somebody from soccer, and that that kind of thing. It's why characters are always like single.
Maybe so, yeah.
Okay, let's hear from Jeffrey Deaver. In his latest book, The Final Twist, Coulter Shaw attempts to complete his father's task of finding a missing courier bag full of explosive evidence, only to find that there is a present-day danger of mass murder resting on his investigation. We'd love to hear part of The Final Twist, and I love that title, by the way.
Well, thank you. I'll set the scene here a little bit. Yes, Coulter is in San Francisco in The Final Twist, which begins about 8 hours after the last Coulter Shaw book from Putnam. That was The Goodbye Man, which in itself began about 6 hours after the first in the series, The Never Game. So we're kind of racing along. I love my roller coaster thrillers. But so Coulter is in San Francisco chasing the courier bag, being chased by any number of bad people. It is utter carnage, but I'm not going to read you about that. We're going to go back a number of years. This is a flashback, and Coulter is now 16, and he is living in the compound his father has created in the Sierra Nevadas after he escaped Cal, University of California at Berkeley, because he had discovered something that may have to do with the mysterious courier bag, and is being pursued. This was years ago. And now he, Coulter, and his brother, Russell, they've learned how to be survivalists. They're out hunting for food and foraging. And they come across a part of their land, which is on an avalanche field. And a couple city slickers are on a photo safari there, and they have no clue what they're doing. And a woman has slipped down the hillside and is now in danger of the avalanche field. And we'll pick up the story there.
Okay.
Coulter assesses odds that the whole field will give way, 80%. Survival of somebody who has no deep snow training, 5%. Somebody who had some training, unknown, but better than that. Coulter drops his backpack and discards his weapons. Russell, his brother, is staring at his younger brother. Colt, no, don't. This is not our job. No time for discussion. Coulter leaps off the ridge and runs quickly across the field in the ungainly lope of a snowshoe jogger. Just as he reaches her, the rest of the mountain cuts loose, a vast swath of snow and ice 50 or 60 yards wide, dropping, tumbling, picking up speed. Tides like this can easily reach 100 miles an hour. As he pops the quick release of his shoes and steps out of them, he sees her panicked face, tears streaming. She has large dark eyes, an upturned nose, and lipstick or sunscreen that matches her violet snowsuit. Your other shoe, he asks. What's going to happen, she cries. Shoe, he snaps. Undone. She straightens up and tries to pull it out of the drift. She blinks as she looks at him, over him, realizing for the first time how young he actually is. Leave the shoe, Coulter orders. He lifts her camera off and tosses it away. In the turbulence of an avalanche, solid objects, even small ones, can maim and kill. A glance crestward. They have 30 seconds. Listen to me, he says. When it hits, don't fight it. Pretend you're swimming. Kick with your legs, swim with your arms, swim with it, like you're in the surf. Got that? No answer. Have you got it? He insists. Yes, swimming, she nods. 20 seconds till the tide slams into them. When you feel yourself slowing, curl up and take a deep breath, as deep as you can, and with one hand, clear a space around your mouth for air. Lift the other arm up as high as you can, up, so the searchers know where you are. Make a space around your mouth, a big space. There'll be enough air. It could last you for a half hour. I'm scared, she says. 10 seconds. The wave is 6 feet high, now 7, now 8, and accelerating. It's trailed by dust, swirling and thick as forest fire smoke. You'll do fine, he says. You'll do fine. Swim, remember, swim. Hand over your mouth, arm up. This is a slough avalanche, more loose snow than slabs. If they died, it would be by suffocation, not a blow to the head. Coulter doesn't know which is worse. Suffocation, probably. She stares at the wave. Coulter turns her around so that she's facing downhill. 5 seconds, 4 seconds. Coulter shuffles away so their bodies don't become bludgeons against each other. Swim, he calls. She does. He does too. He takes a deep breath and then, well, I am a suspense writer, so I pretty much have to leave it there. I'm sorry, what can I say? If you want to find out what happens, you got to buy the book. Or email me later and I'll let you know.
Sneaky, very sneaky. So I understand Coulter Shaw has like a team of his. He has employees who can research for him when he's out and about in all these various locations.
I should mention who Coulter Shaw is. Coulter Shaw is a man who has a career that I made up, but it seems credible enough. And we're all fiction writers. All we have to be is credible. We don't have to be accurate. We have to be credible. So if the reader says, I'll buy that, it doesn't have to be completely accurate. These books, my books at least, are not treatises. They're, a fantasy book, not fantasy in the genre, but fantasy in the sense that I make stuff up. And so what he does is he travels around the country looking for rewards that have been posted for missing children, for missing maybe a silver situation where an older parent or grandparent has gone missing, for escaped convicts, for suspects the police cannot find. And he sits in his Winnebago, drives around the country, and he looks for these rewards. But we learned pretty soon in the Never Game, the first book of the series, he doesn't need the money. He doesn't care about the money. What he cares about is the challenge. And if a reward is posted, by definition, that means that somebody has not been able to solve a problem. The child can't be found, and the police often don't care because there's no signs of foul play, and they'll give it a couple days, but the parents don't want a couple days. Or the escaped convict has been so clever that he is now 5 states away and the resources of the state are not enough to go track the guy down. But Shaw wants that challenge. And that's what he does, and gives me the great opportunity to travel around the country. And if there are any IRS people listening now, I legitimately conduct all of my travel to those places. And I've had great fun doing it. And I'm working on my 4th Coulter Shaw right now, although it says the final twist. That is not the end of the series. In fact, this year I'm doing 2 books. The final twist in May, a Lincoln Rhyme book, The Fellow from the Bone Collector, in November. Next year, Coulter Shaw. The year after that, a Lincoln Rhyme book, alternating the 2 characters.
Wow. That sounds busy. So if he's working he goes to these different locations, do you decide on the plot and then find a location, or does a location occur to you, or you stumble on it you really like and you think, I want to work a plot around this?
Sure. It's never a plot I like. And some of you have heard me give speeches about writing. My feeling is that this is all about the about the readers, not the writers, not me. I want to give the readers the most exciting read I possibly can. That means a roller coaster ride. My books take place over only a few days, lots of twists and turns and reversals. And so I will try to come up with a story that I think will make people happy, make them turn pages. And I think someone had said, I think maybe Kris had said, it looks like there's a lot of peril. Well, my books have pretty much happy endings, and I too don't hurt children or animals. I don't do sexual violence. I have bad guys, a lot of bad guys, and some adults don't survive the end of the book, but I'm just much more comfortable telling the story that people will be, they'll smile at the end or maybe shiver a little bit. And in fact, a reviewer of the final twist said, and the final twist occurs in the last paragraph of the book, and it's one that almost brought a tear to his eye. He said he was so moved by it. So it's not just catching the bad guy, it's having this emotional connection. And so a long answer to I write much more concisely than I talk, Lisa, as I think you probably know by now.
I know.
That's true. But I found that what I do is I look for a plot, and then I will pick an area that will be conducive to that plot.
And how do you travel? Do you drive? Do you fly? Do you stay there for a long time? Do you run a house?
Yeah, I mean, I always go to every place I've been. I'll tell you a very fast story. I wrote a book called A Maiden's Grave some years ago that you may know as the movie Dead Silence, starring James Garner and Matlin.
Marley Maiden.
Yeah, it was very fun to see. They did a great job with the movie. But I had a scene I went to school in Missouri, University of Missouri Journalism School, and I would go to Kansas, a neighboring state. My girlfriend lived there. And so we would go whitewater rafting on this very fun river in Kansas, eastern Kansas, not far from Kansas City. And it was kind of scary. And so I thought, well, I'm going to set my book in Kansas, and I'm going to have a couple children, in fact, escape from this kidnap situation and jump in inner tubes and have a harrowing ride down this whitewater river to safety. And again, they were never hurt. It was a little scary. And so the book came out, and I started to get emails. This was actually pre-email. I may have had a few emails, but it was letters from people saying, I'm sorry, the only risk on that river is tripping over a cow pie, if you know what a cow pie is. But because it had been dammed before I had written the book, after I had been there years ago. So rule number one in research, go there. And I don't really care how I get there. I do travel a lot. I haven't for the last year, but now that's going to change. We're I hope getting back to normal. So always do your research in person, my advice.
I had the same thing at the end of Takeover. I had a car. I was going to run this car off the end of the East Ninth Pier in Cleveland, because I'm thinking of it when I was young, and there used to be a restaurant at the end and everything. And it was actually a pier. It was this long wooden pier. And so I went there with my mother to take pictures and scout out the locations. And they had changed it into a park, and the pier didn't extend out anymore. And they had these big concrete stanchions so that there was no way a car was going to get anywhere near the water. So I had to rewrite the whole end of the book. So I know exactly what you mean.
I had one. I had one where it was at a C-30 plane flying at 40,000 feet, and of course a pilot wrote to say, "Dear Mr. Palmer, let me talk to you about space." Evidently, that's where the plane was near.
Near. So unless it's a space shuttle, that's not going to work. Okay.
Can't happen.
Okay, well, that concludes all our reading, so we can open up to all a little round robin here. And if Kris has been monitoring, if there's any questions, she will chime in with them. Otherwise, I'd like,
I just checked and there aren't at this point, but I say, fair game, anybody who wants to ask away.
Well, I'm
How
sure
many, Nancy almost wants to know how many Lincoln Rhyme books will be coming.
There will be the 15th Lincoln Rhyme will be out in November, and I've outlined the 16th. That will be out in 20. Oh my gosh, what year is it now? 2021. 22. He'll be out in 2023, and so this is that one is in the works now. There'll be another one for 2 years past that. Oh my gosh, a good thing I'm sitting down. I'm feeling rather tired now. But I have other stuff coming out. There'll be a Lincoln Rhyme short story that will precede the novel in November. It's called A Perfect Plan, and that will be out in September from Putnam. Just go to my website and you'll be able to see that. And a lot of other, as I mentioned, the occult, audible.com short stories, doing a lot of short fiction. I love short fiction. And may I ask a question of my fellow authors?
Of course.
What are you, does anyone here like short fiction? Do you write it? Are you thinking about it?
I've written some, and I am thinking about maybe doing some short fiction in between books, just as a bit of a palate cleanser. If I can't come up with something fast enough, I can, because I have many ideas that I don't think have legs that are long enough for a whole novel.
Exactly.
But with the resurgence of audiobooks that I used to listen to when I was a kid on cassette tapes, and I love audiobooks, and I think that's a really interesting path to take.
And if I may interrupt, I used to listen to audiobooks too, but they were on these things called records, and they were vinyl, and they went around at 78 RPM. And so you couldn't use a Walkman with that. You had to stay at home pretty much.
Yeah.
So Susan Klingbell has a question for Daniel. She wants to know, she says, I'm obviously out of touch. Didn't know Daniel wrote under another name. How many have I missed?
You have missed 3. Well, 2. Well, 3, I guess, if you count the one that just came out. So it's The Perfect Daughter, The New Husband, and Saving Megan are all written as DJ Palmer. And then next year I have a book coming out called My Wife is Missing. And I just heard today that my editor loves the book. So I can,
I know
Yes.
that's so easy. That is
Always such a big relief.
fraught moment. So there'll be a 4th DJ book. And then I'm toying with writing a new type of book in a new direction, co-authoring with a buddy of mine. So that's kind of a little secret project that's beginning. And Jeff, to your question about short fiction, I love writing it. I think it's really hard. Who was it who said I'd write you a shorter letter if I had time?
I heard it was Abraham Lincoln and Julius Caesar. So take your pick.
Whoever, yeah, it's just,
Wow.
it's really hard to do. And I'm interested, also, I'm seeing a lot of my author friends writing these Audible originals, which I think is really fascinating. So I feel like it's just a great time for us to be content creators. There's so many channels for content. So it really, even hearing you, Jeff, it's very inspiring how much you're working. I probably should, up my game a little bit and get more hours in the chair.
Well,
8 to 10 hours is a long day writing.
Well, my theory has been this last year, it has been somewhat productive for me, but not kudos to me. You can only watch so many Curb Your Enthusiasm reruns and Deep reruns before you start to go completely stir crazy. And so I finally said, well, I better put this time to somewhat better use.
I find after 4 or 5 hours, what I start to type is like from The Shining, where it's no play.
So I have a question for everyone. Now that the mask mandates are changing, are you planning to start going to conventions and things again? I mean, we have a few coming up. Lisa Black is going to be our guest of honor at Killer Nashville. So I'm assuming
is
she'll be there. VoucherCon's coming up.
Well, I'm in Canada and we're still in lockdown. That's just been extended. We still have a stay-at-home order in Ontario until June the 2nd. And coming back into the country, it's 3 days mandatory quarantine at a government-run hotel, providing you get back a negative test. And if you don't, then you're there for 2 weeks. So I'm not going anywhere, unfortunately. No in-person. My publisher, HarperCollins, they said no in-person events for 2021. So I'll be here.
Well, I'll be doing, I have an event in Virginia, October, that's in person. It went from virtual to in person. I'm not going to VoucherCon, to be frank with you, because isn't it in August in New Orleans? And
Yes.
it's just, so I don't do well in the heat. But I think in November, I have a book, The New Lincoln Rhyme, coming out here and in the UK. And I'm gonna try to tour. I'm gonna try to do a regular tour. There's nothing like live meet your fans. And you know, I mean, I've been vaccinated and I'm venturing out a little. I'm being cautious. I wear a mask still outside, and I think that's just a wise idea. But come later in the year, I want to meet folks face to face again.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm vaccinated as well, and
Yeah, me too.
also really enjoy seeing people. I am going to Killer Nashville with Lisa, and I am planning to go to VoucherCon New Orleans in August, notwithstanding. And one thing that I do as a new author is I contact local Rotaries. I think those are international. You probably have them in Canada.
Yes,
so
we do.
and I send out something about my child advocacy background and also my new book, and ask if they would like to have me as one of those noon speakers. Sometimes it's 5 people, sometimes it's 100. And it's interesting, we just sent out today the first round of saying I'm interested in doing this on this book, and got an in-person request for a week from now for the Rotary group's first in-person lunch. And I really love those small groups and getting to know people and getting that energy. So it looks like maybe it's changing. That's California. So I don't know where we are compared to other states in our I'm on the vaccine advisory group for the state, so I know where we are, but I'm not sure where the other states are. Yeah, I'm excited.
I'll make a confession here. Those live events really stress me out, and I've been super happy about the Zoom events, and not because I don't like being in front of people or talking to people. I just feel I get stressed out getting people out the door to come see me. Some of my events have been really great, but I'm like, it's like the Hanukkah party. I'm like, oh, there's my mom, and there's my aunt, and there's Aunt Shirley, you know, so it just feels like, you know, trying to tell people, hey, come out. And I feel this pressure to do it. So the Zoom has been kind of liberating, but I should probably get back out there and do it again. So I'm going to
Do you think you'll continue with in-person and virtual moving forward?
I think that's a really interesting question. Sorry, Donnie thinks it's an interesting question too. He just called me. I would love to do that. I noticed, like, I did an event. Lee Child was super gracious and agreed to do kind of a, you know, in conversation for The Perfect Daughter with the Poison Pen. And I looked, and it has over 2,000 views. Yeah. So it, you know, while maybe 60 people showed up, it just lives in perpetuity online. Yeah. So I could, you know, people come back to it, they discover it. So I've actually found the Zoom stuff to be really effective, and it's easier for me to go online and say, hey, you don't have to leave your house, you don't have to park, you don't have to just click and watch.
I loved it the one time I was on
energy. It's just not the same energy as in person. So
I loved it the one time I was on a panel with Lee Child. There were like 800 people in the room that came to see me. At least that's what he told me.
Right. I mean, my video may have gotten some of the maybe the most views, and there's a chance it's not all because of me. There's a chance.
It's all because of you.
Data
And
mining on that to
Janine
try to
Woodward.
resolve that.
Janine
Yeah.
Woodworth is saying that she appreciates your talent and looks forward to reading new authors. DJ, I am always telling folks how terrific your books are.
Wow.
So
Thank you. I
there
appreciate
you
it.
have it.
Great.
Thank you. That does. It means a lot. I love hearing from happy readers. This is a business where great news comes sometimes in, after long periods of not news or not great news. So it's really nice to hear. Anytime you can prop up an author, the author appreciates it. So thank you. And
Yes.
Lisa, thank you for having all of us and hosting such a great event. I had so much fun.
Oh, you're welcome. Well, actually, I'm just like the talking head here. It's Kris that does everything.
Well, and we did have some technical difficulties. I have to admit it. Facebook is giving us fits. So we will be airing the whole program live again I'll put it through and air it again as a live video as soon as we complete. So it'll air 2 or 3 times as a live video. We'll put it out on our various platforms and it will get views. We usually get in the hundreds of views. So we should be great. We've had as many as, a couple thousand views. So
Good.
I apologize though, for anyone that you speak to who says it wasn't live on Facebook. It was on YouTube, not on Facebook, because Facebook.
Nobody tuned in to watch me. I know that, so don't worry about it.
Well, we had a good crowd in the room, although most of them kept their cameras off. So 30 people in the
Okay.
room, 40 people in the room. So
Wow.
yeah.
That's a lot. That's a lot.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I guess I will wrap things up unless anyone has any last comments or anything, or
Thank you. That's my comment. Thank you very much.
you're
I just,
welcome.
Hannah, I had one quick question for Hannah. Were you on that beach? Because it seemed so real, that scene. I didn't get where your book took place.
No,
Is it in Canada?
no, it's in it starts off in Maryland and then moves to Maine. So I've been to Maine because when we visit family in New Brunswick, we drive through the US, non-COVID times, of course. But I had never been to Maryland, no, but I spoke to people who live there and I'm very visual when I had pictures of a beach and stuff. So
Well,
thank
that
you.
makes
I'm glad
sense
it
then.
felt real.
It felt very visual. That makes sense. Thank you. And thank you also for letting me be in this incredibly esteemed group. I'm honored as a newbie to be here and learn from you all. So thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, well, everyone tune in next month. On June 14th, we're going to have Nikisia Afia, Paul Dwaron, and Tracy Clark,
Wow.
and Riley Sager.
Wow.
So yes,
Wonderful.
that will be a very fun event. And thank you so much for coming with us tonight. It's been really fun.
Thank you.
everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Thanks,
Bye.
Kris, for reading. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.